You know, the guitar is a lot of things. It's romance, it's mystery, it's physics, it's acoustics, it's engineering, it's art, it's architecture, it's metal, it's wood, it's bone. It's a lot of things. But at bottom, as a musical instrument, it's an air pump. That's really all it is. So insofar as one's work with the air pump, one needs to figure out how to make it a successful musical instrument, which means it has to be an air pump that's efficient, that pumps a lot of air for the amount of energy the strings bring to the system. There's a finite amount of energy with the guitar compared to the violin, where people can, saw away until their arm falls off. But energy management in this subtle air pump is what has occupied most of my waking hours for many, many years. And there are different things that come into play in dealing with that. Of course, there are the choices of woods. Everybody deals with that and comes to some arrangement as to which ones they prefer. I am prejudiced toward woods that have the best stiffness to weight ratio that I can find, which means lightweight but very stiff. There's also a quality that scientists call Q, which has to do with liveness. For a long time I thought Q stood for some very abstruse scientific piece of nomenclature, but it stands for quality. So I just think that's funny. So a wood with a high Q would have high quality and would be very vitreous, would be very live, and take incoming energies from a tap and use them to make mechanical movement which would excite air and which would be heard as sound. Now, traditionally, Brazilian rosewood is the wood of choice for guitar sides and backs. It happens to have a very high Q. Before Brazilian rosewood was used for the making of better guitars, it was used in the making of marimbas, xylophones. I mean, just a piece of wood that carries a musical note. That's pretty amazing, I think, when you think of it. I have some samples of Brazilian rosewood here. This is a Brazilian rosewood back. Now, there's nothing mysterious about this. It's just a plate of wood that's more or less guitar-sized and shaped. There's no bracing on it. It's book-matched, which is the typical arrangement. But this wood has vitreousness and liveness to a degree that puts most others to shame. I'll illustrate by just tapping it. Now, tapping is sort of an art form unto itself. Some people really believe in it, some people really don't. Some people are confused by the fact that you get vastly different tones depending on how and where you hold it and tap it. The important thing is to ascertain whether or not the wood has tapping or ringing potential. The rest will take care of itself. But this is, again, nothing disguised, nothing going on. This is a wonderful piece of wood. It has all kinds of potential toward being active when it's part of an air pump. There's a whole spectrum of woods one can use. It's not necessary to use woods that are like that. In fact, most woods have lower Q than that. Ranging through all kinds of intermediate degrees and grades to something like this. This is a piece of very attractive maple. It's got some spalting on it and some coloration. But it doesn't have that ringing, sustaining activity that a wood like that would. I don't consider either one of these to be a better or worse wood, because one would pick them depending on what kind of sound one is expecting the guitar to make. Now, that guitar, because it has the capacity to sustain itself in activity, everything else being equal, would very likely make a guitar that has a sustaining quality. And that'll work fine for many musics. This would make a sound that is characterized by a much more dead and deadening response. This piece of wood is softer, spongier, and will absorb energies. And if you wanted a guitar that had a bright, quick, rapidly decaying, zingy sound, flamenco, certain kinds of jazz, this really would be a wonderful choice for that. In jazz, you don't want a rich, lush sound that continues, because the musician is playing notes and he wants the old ones to get out of the way, because more notes are coming. So in considering the intelligent construction of an air pump, the kind and quality of the materials always comes into play. Now, most people spend, I think, most of their professional thinking time pondering the guitar top and its bracing. And the bracing is probably the single most discussed aspect of serious guitar making. In the world of the Spanish guitar, every prominent maker has his own proprietary variation or type of bracing which is associated with his name. For the steel string guitar, this is not the case, and almost all steel string guitars on the planet are braced with an X brace, which is like that over there. That's the template and model for almost every steel string guitar you'll ever see anywhere. So the bracing is something that people occupy themselves with quite a lot. People vary it, people scallop the braces, they arrange them differently, they carve them, profile them, and in so doing they pretty much ignore the back. But my thinking is different insofar as that I want to recognize that the back makes a contribution. Now, you can discern that pretty easily by taking any guitar, taking your own guitar. I have a guitar that I'm in the process of building here. You can see it's the sound box shell without the neck yet. And tapping it, well, I'll take this tape off. I put tape on these because I like to protect the faces, because there's so much handling of these things. And in any event, that can be edited out, I'm sure. Now, this is the voice of the sound box at this point in time. Are you registering the sound on? All right. Now, if we take a closer look at this, we will see that this is the voice of the sound box looked at from a particular point of view. I'm tapping on the top. The path of energies in the sound box is that the top becomes activated from the strings. This activates the air mass, which activates the back, which then in turn activates the air mass and the top. And the sound energies bounce back and forth. Some of that sound activity is released through the sound port, and others are bounced off the exterior surfaces. But there's a lot of bouncing around activity, and the back necessarily is involved in that. How do we know that?